The CEO's little daughter finally spoke her very first word. She pointed straight at the waitress and called her Mommy in front of everyone. Quick question, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments and subscribe. This story has a surprise finale you need to see. The morning shift at Rosie's Diner started at 5:15 a.m., but Heather always arrived at 4:47, 18 minutes before anyone else. She liked the quiet, the way the fluorescent lights hummed over empty booths, the smell of coffee not yet brewed, the silence before the chaos of breakfast rush descended like a wave she'd learned to ride but never truly mastered. 26 years old, $1,147 in her savings account, $31,200 in student loans for a nursing degree she'd abandoned 3 semesters before finishing, and a studio apartment in Queens that cost her $1,175 a month for 422 square feet of space that she'd somehow turned into a home. She tied her apron with practiced hands, the same motion she'd made 6 mornings a week for the past 19 months, and began her opening routine. Salt shakers first, then pepper, then the sugar caddies, making sure each one had exactly 12 packets of white, 8 of brown, and 6 of that artificial stuff that tasted like chemicals, but that Mr. Henderson at table 4 requested every single day without fail. To understand who Heather really was, you had to go back 9 years, to a cramped apartment in Newark, where a 17-year-old girl sat beside her father's hospital bed holding a hand that had grown too weak to squeeze back. Thomas Murphy had been a construction worker for 23 years. He'd built houses, office buildings, the new wing of St. Mary's Hospital, where he would eventually take his last breath. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4 by the time they caught it, because Thomas Murphy was the kind of man who didn't complain about stomach pain, who worked through exhaustion, who put his daughter's college fund ahead of doctor's appointments. He died on a Tuesday in March. Heather remembered because it had been raining, a cold, relentless rain that seemed to match the hole opening up inside her chest. She was 17, her mother had left when she was 6, and suddenly she was alone in a way that most people never truly understand. "You're gonna be something, sweetheart," her father had said in those final hours, his voice barely above a whisper. "Promise me, don't let this world make you hard. Stay soft, stay kind. That's the real strength." She'd promised. And for 9 years, through every struggle, every setback, every moment when giving up seemed easier than going on, she'd kept that promise. The nursing program had been her dream, a way to help people the way the nurses had helped her father in those final weeks. But dreams cost money, and money was something Heather never seemed to have enough of. When her financial aid fell through after her 3rd semester, when the choice became finish school or keep a roof over her head, she'd made the practical decision, the heartbreaking one. Now she poured coffee for strangers and tried not to think about what might have been. "Morning, honey." Dolores, the other morning waitress, shuffled through the back door at exactly 5:14 a.m., 1 minute before she was required. 63 years old, 41 of them spent in this diner, and she moved like someone who'd long ago made peace with the fact that this was her life. "You're here early again. Couldn't sleep." Dolores gave her a knowing look. "The dream again?" Heather shrugged, not wanting to talk about it. The dream was always the same, her father's hospital room, the beeping of machines, the moment when the line went flat. 9 years, and she still woke up some nights with tears on her cheeks and an ache in her chest that no amount of time seemed to heal. "Table 7's yours today," Dolores said, moving toward the kitchen. "The regulars love you there. Better tips." Table 7, the big corner booth by the window. Heather nodded and grabbed a fresh pot of coffee as the first customers of the day began trickling through the door. By 8:47 a.m., the breakfast rush was in full swing. Heather had served 31 customers, refilled coffee cups approximately 87 times, and earned $47, $25 in tips. A decent morning, but not great. Her feet ached in the sensible black shoes she'd bought at Payless for $24.99, and there was a small grease stain on her apron that she hoped no one would notice. That was when he walked in. She didn't notice him at first, just another customer in a city full of them. But then she saw the child, and everything else faded into background noise. The little girl couldn't have been more than 2 years old. She had dark curly hair that bounced with each step, enormous brown eyes that seemed to take in everything at once, and she was clutching a stuffed elephant that had clearly seen better days. The man carrying her was tall, easily 6'2", with dark hair touched with the faintest hint of grey at the temples, a jaw that looked like it had been carved from stone, and eyes the colour of storm clouds. He wore jeans and a simple grey sweater that probably cost more than Heather's monthly rent. But the most striking thing about him wasn't his obvious wealth or his movie star good looks. It was the way he held his daughter, protective, tender, like she was the most precious thing in his world, like she was his entire world. "Anywhere?" he asked, his voice deeper than she expected. "Wherever you'd like," Heather said, grabbing a menu. "But the corner booth has the best view if you're interested, and we have high chairs." He hesitated for just a moment, something flickering across his face, surprise maybe at her warmth. Then he nodded. "The corner booth sounds perfect." Heather led them to table 7 and watched as he settled his daughter into the high chair with practiced ease. The little girl immediately began banging her stuffed elephant against the table, making sounds that weren't quite words, but were clearly meant to communicate something important. "Baba Baba," she announced, looking at Heather with those enormous eyes. "Is that so?" Heather found herself smiling, a real smile, not the professional one she wore like armor. "That's very interesting. Tell me more." The little girl grinned, revealing 4 tiny teeth, and banged her elephant harder. "Sorry," the man said, reaching for the menu. "She's vocal. Don't apologize. She's adorable." Heather pulled out her notepad. "Coffee, please, black. And for the little one, we have apple juice, milk, orange juice. Milk, please, in a sippy cup if you have one." "We do." Heather made a note. "I'll give you a few minutes with the menu." She walked away, but something made her glance back over her shoulder. The man was staring at his daughter with an expression she recognized, love and grief so intertwined that it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. She'd seen that look in the mirror for months after her father died. When she returned with the coffee and milk, the man had composed himself. Whatever she'd seen was buried beneath a mask of casual indifference. "Ready to order? Pancakes for me, and—" He studied the menu, then the child. "Do you have anything soft?" She's still working on the whole chewing thing. "Our oatmeal is really good. I can ask the kitchen to make it a little sweeter. Add some mashed banana. The kids usually love it." Something shifted in his expression. Gratitude, maybe, or surprise at her thoughtfulness. "That sounds perfect. Thank you." "Of course." She scribbled the order. "I'm Heather, by the way. Just flag me down if you need anything." "Heather," he repeated, like he was committing it to memory. "I'm Daniel, and this is Lily." "Hi, Lily." Heather waved at the little girl, who waved back with her elephant. "That's a beautiful name." It was her mother's favorite flower. The past tense hit Heather like a physical blow. Was her mother's. She understood suddenly the grief she'd seen in his eyes. "I'll get this order in right away," she said softly, and walked toward the kitchen with a heaviness in her chest that had nothing to do with her own sorrows. The morning continued. Customers came and went. Heather refilled coffee cups, took orders, delivered plates of eggs and bacon and toast. But she found herself checking on table 7 more than strictly necessary, making sure Daniel's coffee was always fresh, that Lily had enough napkins for the oatmeal she was enthusiastically spreading across her face. It was during one of these check-ins, 11:23 a.m., she'd remember later, that it happened. Lily had been babbling steadily for the past hour, a constant stream of sounds that were almost words but not quite. Daniel seemed used to it, responding to her nonsense syllables as if she were delivering important news, and Heather found herself charmed by their interaction. She was refilling Daniel's coffee, his fifth cup, when Lily suddenly went quiet. The little girl was staring at Heather with an intensity that seemed impossible for a 2-year-old. Her small hand lifted, finger pointing directly at Heather's face, and then clear as a bell, loud enough for the entire diner to hear. "Mama." The coffee pot in Heather's hand tilted. Hot liquid splashed across the table, across her hand, but she barely noticed the burn. Her eyes were locked on Lily's, on that tiny finger still pointing, on the word that seemed to echo in the sudden silence of the diner. "Mama," Lily said again, firmer this time, as if confirming her own declaration. "Mama, Mama, Mama." Every customer in the restaurant had turned to look. Dolores stood frozen by the register, her mouth hanging open. A man at table 3 had stopped mid-bite, his fork suspended in the air. Daniel's face had gone pale. "Lily," he said, his voice strained. "No, sweetie, that's not—" "Mama!" Lily shouted, reaching her arms toward Heather. "Mama! Mama!" Heather's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. This couldn't be happening. This was impossible. She'd been waiting tables for 19 months, had served thousands of customers, had smiled at countless children. No one had ever— "I'm so sorry," Daniel was saying, fumbling for his wallet, his composure completely shattered. "I don't know why she's never her first word, and he was spiraling. Heather could see it happening, could see the panic rising in his eyes, the way his hands were shaking as he pulled out a $100 bill and threw it on the table. "I need to go. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Wait." The word left her mouth before she could stop it. "Wait, please." He paused, Lily already in his arms, the little girl still reaching toward Heather with desperate hands, still crying "Mama" over and over like it was the only word she knew. Heather stepped closer. "It's okay," she said softly. "It's okay. She's not wrong, you know." Daniel stared at her. "What? I mean—" Heather felt her cheeks flush. "Not that I'm her, obviously I'm not, but she's 2. She sees a woman being nice to her, and her little brain made a connection. It's actually really normal, really healthy." She didn't know if any of that was true. She was making it up, saying whatever came to mind to ease the anguish on this stranger's face. "She's never spoken before," Daniel said, his voice breaking. 26 months old, and she's never said a single word. The specialists said she might be delayed, that she might need therapy, that she might— He stopped, swallowed hard. Her first word, and it was "Mama." The word hung between them, heavy with meaning neither of them fully understood. "That's not something to be sorry about," Heather said. "That's something to be grateful for." She spoke. That's what matters. Lily had stopped crying. She was watching Heather with those enormous eyes, her elephant clutched to her chest, her small body still straining toward this stranger who had somehow become the most important person in her world. "Can I?" Heather asked, gesturing toward the child. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. Heather reached out and took Lily's tiny hand. The little girl's fingers wrapped around hers immediately, holding on tight. "Hey there, sweet girl," Heather murmured. "You did so good today. Your first word. That's so big. Your daddy must be so proud." Lily smiled, a beautiful, innocent smile that knew nothing of grief or loss or the complicated emotions swirling around her. "Mama," she said again, softer this time, like a secret meant just for Heather, and Heather, who had spent 9